Eric, you are a political commentary, you're a YouTuber, and you recently worked in Zohran Mamdani's campaign, which I already mentioned, and that would also be my first question to you, and then I would like to give you the floor in order to address our audience here in the room. Eric, as far as I'm aware, the campaign with Zohran has been very polarized. This is at least what we could see here in Europe, that it has been almost a hostile political situation, and still he succeeded in being or presenting himself as the authentic politician that he is. So first of all, how did you manage with him and his team to present him as this authentic politician, and what would be the, let's say, three key learnings that you would like to share with us? And now the floor is yours, and a warm welcome also to you, Eric. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to chime in about Zohran's campaign. I don't know if we can boil it down to three simple methods of, success in Zohran Mamdani's campaign. Some may say he was polarizing, but I think it felt like a very different reality when we were walking through the streets just a few days before the primary election in June of 2025. It was a hot, humid, kind of disgusting day in New York City, and Zohran made the decision to walk from the very top of Manhattan all the way down to the bottom tip of Manhattan, which was, I think, about 14 miles. And I have no idea what that is in kilometers, but it's a good distance. And it was, we were all sweaty, we were disgusting. But despite the otherwise adverse conditions, every step of the way, this guy had a smile on his face and was over the moon to talk with every single person, whether they supported him or not, on the streets of New York throughout this endeavor. And I think it really went to show that if you want to be a politician for the people, you have to be among the people, going to the masses, hanging out with the masses, saying, hey, how's your day going? What sort of material problems are you facing? And how can I, as a politician, make your life better? And just seeing that in person was incredible. So from a video perspective, we frankly didn't have to do that much to answer your question. He made it very easy to come across as the genuine, authentic guy he is. I don't think he's the end-all, be-all of politics, but he did a pretty damn good job of saying, listen, I have put my entire career on the line for this movement that I very heavily believe in with my entire heart, and I will work every day to make sure that I can deliver results and try to make New York a more livable place for people who call it home.
Yeah, that applause is yours. That applause is yours, and maybe you could extend it also to Zohran from us. No, thanks for sharing this insight with us. And what was the content that you focused on in your campaign? I mean, walking from or through Manhattan, this is one thing that you do, but that doesn't mean that you reach millions, and millions voted for him. So what were the messages? What was the content that you conveyed with your online campaign to the people?
It was a matter of, I'll give you an example. The very first video Zohran put out, I wasn't affiliated with him at the time. He went to this random street in the middle of Queens, one of the most racially diverse places on planet Earth. And he went with a microphone and a camera, and he asked, hey, who did you vote for in 2024? And people who you would never have expected to have voted for Donald Trump came up and said, Donald Trump. We're talking black, brown, poor, rich, everyone. And he then asked them why. And overwhelmingly, they said, well, things are just too goddamn expensive. My rent is going up. The cost of groceries is going up. I can't afford to send my kids to childcare every day. And how the hell am I supposed to go to work if my kids are at home? Just the basic material conditions that we have come to know is what makes up the hardships of living in arguably the most expensive city on the planet. And so he, as I think the great politician that he is, wanted to figure out what are the little things that genuinely, aside from the big guys, the rent, the fast and free buses, the universal childcare, what can we message around that people feel on a day-to-day basis? And in New York, I'm assuming most folks here have been to New York, or though maybe that's just like the arrogant American coming out. As you'll know, in New York, there are these street food carts all over the place. We call them halal food. They are halal carts. Usually you can get chicken over rice, lamb over rice, some sort of kebab of some sort. And they're fantastic. They're like the backbone of what makes up the lunchtime economy in New York City. We, as New Yorkers, realized that over the past few years, the price of a simple chicken over rice had gone up $2, $3, $4, which, when it started at $5 or $6, sometimes $7, almost doubling in price was frankly unacceptable and was driving this lunchtime economy so far out of reach for the average, working class New Yorker. So again, he went to the streets, went to these halal cart vendors and said, hey, what's going on with the price of the food? What issues do you have as someone who works in this halal cart for 8, 10, 12 hours a day? What issues do you have that are causing you to drive up this cost of food that we New Yorkers have come to depend upon every single day? And they all said the exact same thing. They said, listen, I have to pay $10, $20, $25,000 to get the medallion just so I can sell this food. But the irony was, the city who was issuing the medallions, they weren't charging that much. It was a nominal amount. It was a couple $100 or something. But the city, under Eric Adams' administration, had simply failed to issue more of these medallions. They simply were just not doing their job. And so Zohran on day one said, hey, look, if you elect me as mayor, I'm going to issue more of these licenses so that we can get more street food vendors and there are less predatory middlemen who are just exploiting a system that frankly should not be in place. So we can drop down the cost of a halal food from $11, $12, $13 down to where it was again, $7 or $8. And speaking to the very the fabric of the existence of New Yorkers who need this food every single day and rely on these halal carts, it sounds insane. But it's just that one of those little things. It is, in my opinion, the definition of sewer socialism, where just every single day you can feel a tiny little piece of your life getting better when things become a little bit more affordable and, within reach.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric, for sharing this. I think it's, without commenting on it, and I would like to move on also to the next speaker, but I think this is one of the key topics that the left has to address, and this is also something that we have learned from your campaign with Zohran, the affordability of life. As far as I'm aware, there has also been a second component that you focused a lot on, which is taxing the rich, fighting for more social justice by distributing wealth from the rich to those who can't afford an affordable life. Not looking back at Zohran's campaign, but looking at your current position and occupation, you're now working also as a video editor for Hasan Piker. I guess many of us know him here, and I would like to ask you, given your current occupation, if you could share, let's say, some insight with us about little practical tricks that you are using together with Hasan, because Hasan has a huge audience and we'd like to know how you manage to reach out to this audience and what the little tricks also at a technical level are, or communication-wise, that you use in order to reach that enormous audience that Hasan has. Please, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently, I have been serving as Hasan's interview producer. We've been producing mini documentaries recently, particularly about the one he went to, I should say, when was it, about 2 or 3 weeks ago? He was in Cuba, detailing the violent American embargo on the island, where the United States has cut off oil from being delivered to the island nation just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, and of course plunging millions of people, almost 10 million people, into complete and total darkness. Of course, they have to do surgeries by phone flashlight. In the case of working with Hasan, it is in very much so the same spirit as working with Zohran Mamdani, where we have this new set of values, or this new sort of litmus test, where people are going to figure out, whether it's constituents or viewers or just your friends and family, they're very quickly going to figure out what your value set is. And based on whether or not you seem like a half-decent person, they are going to believe the overwhelming majority of stuff that you say. If, for example, you're a politician running in the United States in this current moment in time, and you do not support Palestinian liberation or Palestinian resistance, why? Why should anyone trust you when every single day we're being fed videos of children less than 1 year old being bombed with our tax dollars? How in God's green earth are we expected to trust a politician who cannot stand up for a baby, let alone their own constituents? I mean, that is the easiest thing in the world to stand up for. So why would we ever trust them? So it's the exact same thing with Hasan. It is simply a moral framework, a moral structure that we are trying to work within to, of course, gain trust, but also instill a sense of empathy in people and demonstrate every single day that a better world is indeed possible. And in the exact same capacity, as silly as it is, with, Zohran going to a street food vendor and being like, hey, what are the problems you're facing? And talking with people on the street, talking with the working class New Yorkers and saying, what are the problems you're facing as a working class New Yorker? It is in the exact same vein as going to Cuba and talking with the doctors in Cuba who are unable to perform surgeries on patients with the lights on, who are unable to import medicine from the Western world as a consequence of the American embargo. It is that same exact we're seeking that exact same type of truth and trying to piece together different parts of the material conditions created by the American empire, which we've only really known as this violent, horrible entity that's gone around the world and raped and pillaged and plundered. And now we have the opportunity to shine the light back on ourselves and try to figure out how we can not only fix this, but make the world a better place and try to move on and hopefully do that not just together with the Western world and, the EU, but rather with the Global South together.
Thank you very much, Eric. I think this is a very important point, the moral structure that you mentioned, because this is like also the backbone of left-wing politics, right? This is what differentiates us from the extreme right, even though sometimes we might use the same emotions, the values and the moral pattern behind it is different, like empathy, solidarity, what you mentioned, also standing at the side of those who are not well off socially and economically.
So thank you to the three panelists, Eric in Shanghai, who talked about Zohran Mamdani's campaign. You explained very clearly about the moral backdrop that you have to paint to reach people. The walk through Manhattan, this was 20 kilometers, was it? You didn't know about the kilometers, but it was a long way. And you have to go the extra mile. That's the whole point. And Eric and Zohran were very successful. Today, thank you for giving us of your time. All the best to you in Shanghai and for your work. A round of applause for Eric, please. We're very happy to have had you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, well, not how I wanted it to go, if I'm being honest. However, I wrote a speech, so I'm going to give it anyway. Fuck it. Hi, everyone. My name's Eric Hovium. I'm a political commentator who makes videos on YouTube and on TikTok. In the summer of 2025, I had the incredible privilege of working on a handful of Zohran Mamdani's campaign videos just before the NYC mayoral primary. More recently, I've been producing interviews and mini documentaries for Hasan Piker, who you might know was 2024's finalist for Anti-Semite of the Year for his criticism of Israel. Ever since Zohran's campaign, I've had countless requests from folks on the left asking how we did it. I was just a tiny part of the campaign. The real blood, sweat, and tears were shed by Zohran and his core video team. But any of them will tell you this one simple truth. The videos were nothing without his policies. Take his halalflation video, for example. In New York, there are these food trucks everywhere that sell halal food, which is just usually some variation of chicken or lamb over rice. Historically, it's cost around $7, but more recently, it's been closer to 10 or 11. In the video, with a full mouth, Zohran recognizes the core of the problem, the increased price. And rather than talking about boring procedural nonsense, he joins various workers in the halal carts and asks them why it's gotten so expensive. Every single one of them had the exact same thing to say, that their food vending permit was bought from someone else, not the city. So they had to raise their prices. Zohran goes on to say that the mayor's office has the ability to issue more of these licenses so that parasitic middlemen don't have to jack up the cost of your food. So he promises to issue more of these permits to bring the cost down. Of course, the color grading, the sound, the pacing are all perfect, but the entire thing could have been shot on an iPhone with nearly identical impact. That's because at the core of what this kind of politics represents lies a framework guided by authentic lived experience, not just from Zohran, but the masses who he surrounds himself with every single day. The halal cart food price conversation is one that nearly every working New Yorker has had, which is something that super rich Andrew Cuomo couldn't relate to while he was doing pro bono legal work for war criminals like Benjamin Netanyahu. Which, of course, brings me to Israel. There is no secret recipe that can substitute for Zohran's policies and the physical work he put in as an organizer before his campaign. No one could question his solidarity with Palestine or any oppressed person of the world because he himself spent years in the trenches organizing alongside those very people. In some of the videos, he even spoke their languages. During his campaign, he stood up for the likes of Palestinian activists like Mahmoud Khalil, demonstrating a set of values that would guide his mayoralty, which I believe started in January of 2026. Zohran is not the end-all be-all of politics inside the imperial core. And I'm sure a lot of this probably feels obvious, and there's no shortcut to a revolution. But we have a moral duty to meet the masses where they are, employ language they can understand without pandering or talking down, and earnestly work every single day, shoulder to shoulder with the people we call our neighbors and our comrades. In the wise words of a chairman who I've come to revere since recently moving to China, we should go to the masses, learn from them, synthesize their experience into better articulated principles and methods, then do propaganda among the masses and call upon them to put these principles and methods into practice so as to solve their problems and help them achieve liberation and happiness. If you're looking for technical video advice from either Chairman Mao or myself, I'm sure we'd both agree that you should use 32-bit float microphones, shoot in open gate 4x3 when possible so you can crop in for vertical on mobile, and use a shallow depth of field to provide a sense of intimacy with your viewer. Prioritize your audio first, your lighting second, and your camera last. Get a whole color grading node tree going in DaVinci Resolve if it really tickles your fancy. And maybe, just a little bit more importantly, we got to prioritize getting our message across in whatever form feels real to people. I can't tell you what exactly that will be in every single country or county or district, but that's your job, to go to the masses and find out exactly why they're pissed that their weekly lamb over rice plate has gone up $3 in the past year, yet their salaries have not. Which brings me to what I believe is the most important takeaway from any of this. Those who we call our neighbors or our comrades must not be segregated by an artificial line that some pedophile drew up 100 years ago. We must acknowledge the material history that led to our respective countries accruing the wealth we have today. Until we reckon with the fact the streets of Brussels are paved with the blood of 10 million Congolese, the Louvre is filled with the trophies pillaged from the rest of the African continent, and the name Wall Street is derived from the barrier that violent settlers built to keep out indigenous people in New York before exterminating the rest of the indigenous population, we will continue falling into the same traps that have allowed the space for reactionaries to dominate the politics over the past few decades. We cannot start caring about the consequences of capitalism simply because it's finally reached us on our own soil. Of course, this isn't a revelation that some idiot YouTuber like myself invented. Look no further than the pleas of a young Nguyen Ai Quoc, who, in front of the French communists, demanded deeper international solidarity with the very colonies whom they had raped, pillaged, and plundered. He quoted Lenin on the need for workers inside the imperial core to help liberation movements in subject nations, and went on to profess, unfortunately, there are still many militants who think a colony is nothing but a country full of sand with the sun shining down, a few green coconut trees, and some colored men, and that's all. His calls were largely overlooked, which led him to the Soviet Union and eventually back home, where, under the name Ho Chi Minh, he led the liberation of his people against the French and American imperialist dogs. Thank goodness he was capable enough to move beyond the closed-minded nationalism that turned its back on the workers outside their own borders. Europe is at an interesting crossroads at the moment. It's unclear who leads it, whether it is a state or just a loosey-goosey international finger-wagger, or if it truly has the potential to work together to improve the world, not just for Europe, but for everyone, not just a handful of folks who are Zionist pedophiles and best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I hope that you share my belief that the United States is currently the most belligerent, violent empire in the modern day. Thankfully, for the first time since the illegal dissolution of the Soviet Union, China's offered a new multipolar path forward. We can't be so naive as to overlook the various isms that prevent us from cooperating with our eastern or southern neighbors. The leader who was able to effectively link Rwanda's theft of coltan from Congolese slaves owned by Western mining corporations with the Western worker struggling to afford lamb over rice will have the heart of the world at their fingertips. For better or for worse, America's and Israel's genocide of Palestinians is starting to make things a little clearer for those who have otherwise felt left out of politics. A politician's stance on Israel now serves as a litmus test for their values. If my state senator lacks the humanity to end the bombing of children in refugee camps with my tax dollars, what moral clarity could they possibly exercise when something not nearly as bad happens to me at home? After all, a man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. Every pixel you get on a 4-inch screen in front of someone's eyes is an opportunity to open a new mind and a new heart. Left-wing ideas might sound scary at times. Maybe it's just a dumb American thing, but almost no one you're going to talk with understands what dialectical materialism is. But they do know that their rent is higher, the metro is more expensive, their lamb over rice has gone up $3. It's your job to figure out why, explain it clearly, and work with them to fix it. Thank you.